Welcome to This Explainer. Let's just dive right in, because I'm willing to bet you know exactly how this feels. You're sitting on the couch on a Sunday doing absolutely nothing, and suddenly, bam, that creeping guilt sets in. Or maybe you're the person firing off a quote-unquote quick work email at midnight. Yeah, we've all been there, and you are definitely not alone. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating research from historians and psychologists to really understand our modern relationship with work, and honestly, more importantly, rest. Let's get into the modern hustle, reclaiming rest from the clock. So let's start with a visceral question that honestly hits a little too close to home. Why does relaxing actually feel like failing? I mean, think about it. You find a fun new hobby, right? Maybe you get super into brewing artisanal pour tea, or you pick up crocheting just to decompress. Almost instantly, literally instantly, a voice in your head or maybe even a well-meaning friend chimes in and says, hey, you could totally sell those on Etsy, or you should start a TikTok channel for this. In our current culture, we have this intense, almost reflexive urge to turn every single relaxing hobby into a side hustle. It's like we literally struggle to let a butterfly just be a butterfly. We feel like we have to pin it down and monetize the whole shebang. But I want you to contrast that modern, low-level anxiety with this quote. This comes from a study of traditional communities in high alpine villages, places that were largely spared by intense industrialization. This 74-year-old villager describes a life where work and leisure are just harmoniously integrated. They might spend, 16 hours a day tending an orchard or milking cows, but they don't experience it as this clocked, compulsory labor. It's simply living. As they put it, they feel entirely free. So how in the world did we stray so far from this integrated way of life? Let's look at Section 1, When Time Became Money, the Historical Shift. To really wrap our heads around our clock-obsessed culture, we have to realize that it's actually a pretty recent historical invention. Notice the massive contrast here. In pre-industrial life, work was task-based. It blended organically with daylight and the seasons. You worked from your farm or your home workshop. If it rained or, if winter rolled around, your routine naturally slowed down. It made sense. But on the flip side, post-industrial life completely changed the game. Suddenly, work is clock-based. You're paid an hourly wage, and you literally have to physically commute away from your home to a centralized factory or an office building. Work and life were physically and mentally separated by the clock. And as we move into the 19th century, the market revolution completely engineered this modern concept of clocked time. With rapid, game-changing innovations like the steamboat and the Erie Canal, local, self-sufficient communities were suddenly thrust into this massive national marketplace. And to coordinate all of this, especially with the arrival of the Transcontinental Railroad, we literally had to invent time zones. It's wild to think about, but humans were suddenly synchronizing their actions not to the sun and the sky, but to standardized mechanical clocks, whistles, and belts. So the absolutely crucial point here is how this changed how we value ourselves. Pre-industrial artisans worked for a price. If you were a shoemaker, your compensation was directly tied to the quality and the completion of that shoe. You were entirely autonomous. But industrialization flipped the script completely. Workers began selling their time for a wage. You were compensated for surrendering an uninterrupted block of your day to an employer, regardless of the actual craft. What's fascinating looking back at the historical record is that Thomas Jefferson actually warned about this. He argued that this dependency on clocks and wages was inherently unfree. Which brings us to Section 2, Monetizing Our Free Time, the Gamification of Labor. Fast forward to today, and digital platforms have taken this commodification of time to a completely new level. We are actively monetizing our free time. To really ground this, let's look at some recent academic research presented at the Association of Internet Researchers. Scholars studied Brazilian Twitch streamers to see exactly how platforms govern what they call effective labor. Now, Twitch markets itself as this really fun, casual leisure space to build community and socialize, right? But behind the scenes, it demands intense, constant labor. Streamers are pouring their personal capital, their time, and a massive amount of emotional energy into broadcasting, which completely blurs the lines between being a casual user and an exploited worker. Platform labor basically traps users in a perfect double bind. It's just full of contradictions. It demands extreme consistency from you, yet rarely pays anything close to a living wage. It promises community and tells you to do what you love, which honestly cleverly obscures the fact that it's demanding very real labor. And because the whole thing is framed as a passionate hobby, if you don't succeed financially, the system makes you feel like it's your own personal failure, like you just didn't hustle hard enough, rather than recognizing it as a structural flaw of the platform itself. Academics actually have a great term for this whole phenomenon: ludic capitalism. It's an economic system that uses the aesthetics and the dynamics of play to extract continuous productive labor. Basically, it's gamification acting as a form of soft control. You get notifications, you level up, you hit your daily streaks. It brilliantly disguises constant, exhausting work as fun, making you voluntarily keep playing this game of productivity way, way past the point when you should really be resting. Moving on to Section 3, the psychology of auto-exploitation, internalizing the boss. So what is the psychological toll of all this? We're shifting from how external digital platforms manipulate us to how this mindset has literally infected our own internal psychology. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han diagnoses our modern condition with a much darker concept. He calls it auto-exploitation. Han argues that we no longer live in a disciplinary society where a boss stands over us with a whip. Instead, we live in an achievement society. We've basically internalized the boss. We cheerfully whip ourselves to hit that next deadline, to perfectly optimize our morning routine, to build our personal brand online. We feel like we're acting freely, but we are actually driving ourselves, completely voluntarily, straight into burnout. And the data absolutely backs up just how exhausting this is. Look at this major study of young workers in Italy. The number one reason for stress isn't just physical labor. It's the anxiety about not doing the job well, right up there alongside intense intellectual activity and irregular hours. This data proves that our collective exhaustion is a massive systemic issue. It is not a personal failing on your part. It's the inevitable result of an environment that demands constant, high-level performance without any real boundaries. I really want to emphasize this staggering number here, 77.2%. That is the percentage of Italian youth in that study reporting that their work is very or extremely stressful. Over half of them reported that the boundaries between their work and their free time are completely blurred. They feel incredibly guilty when they rest, and they have massive anxiety about wasting time. I mean, this is exactly what auto-exploitation looks like in the real world. And systemic policy choices absolutely reinforce this dynamic. Recently, the UK government quietly abandoned a proposed right to disconnect law. Now, this was a law that would have given workers the legal right to just ignore work emails outside of contracted hours. By not passing this law, society is essentially treating your constant availability as a free subsidy for modern business models. The economy is basically balancing its books by borrowing, completely uncosted, against your personal health and your quiet evenings. Let's turn to Section 4, the case for true rest, pushing back against the grind. The good news? We absolutely do not have to accept this endless grind. We can reframe our entire relationship with downtime. Let's dismantle the myth that endless hours automatically equal better output. Just look at the hard data from the recent UK 4-day workweek trial. This involved thousands of workers, and the results are honestly incredible. 71% reported less burnout, 39% reported less stress. And what happened to the actual businesses? Well, they maintained or even increased their productivity and revenue. It turns out, actually scratch that. It makes perfect sense. A rested human brain makes fewer mistakes and is just far more effective. The ledger doesn't actually favor endless availability. It favors healthy, well-rested people. We can also learn a lot here from disability politics. There's this fantastic concept called crip time, coined by theorist Alison Coffer, which completely challenges the default able-bodied speed of the world. It shows us that the frantic, breakneck pace of modern capitalism isn't a law of physics, right? It's a political arrangement. And if it's an arrangement, well, it's a choice. Accommodating a slower, more deliberate tempo isn't a failure. It's actually a push for a much more sustainable, human way of existing on this planet. I want to start wrapping things up with this incredibly powerful framing from Tricia Hersey, the founder of the NAP Ministry. She reminds us that rest is not a productivity strategy. You don't sleep just so you can work harder and faster tomorrow. No. Rest is a political refusal. It is a fundamental rejection of the toxic idea that your only value as a human being is your ability to produce. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to take with you today. Take a good look at the hobbies you love, the time you spend with your family, those rare quiet moments you have to yourself. Are you treating your life as an optimization project to be managed, or are you actually living it? I think it's time to finally silence that inner boss, reclaim your time from the clock, and just enjoy your true leisure without an ounce of guilt. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today.